Tonight, in part 3 of Halpin Frayser's story, a shrouded valley, an abandoned graveyard, and a laugh that chills the soul. Dim the lights. Grab a snack, let's begin. A warm, clear night gave way to a morning drowned in fog. Yesterday, about mid-afternoon, a faint smear of vapor, more suggestion than cloud, clung to the west side of Mount St. Helena near the summit. Look fast, you might have said. It'll vanish. Instead, it fattened. One edge hugged the mountain, the other reached out over the lower slopes, while thin patches appeared at the same height to the north and south, as if summoned to join. Soon, the peak was gone, and a gray canopy spread over the valley. At Calistoga, where the valley begins and the mountain rises, night had no stars and morning had no sun. The fog slid south, swallowing ranch after ranch until even St. Helena, 9 miles away, was blotted out. Dust settled, trees dripped, birds went mute. The day's light was pale and ghostly, stripped of color and warmth. At first dawn, 2 men left St. Helena and walked north toward Calistoga. They carried shotguns, but no one who knew the trade would mistake them for hunters. They were a Napa County deputy, Holker, and a San Francisco detective, Geraldson, out for bigger game. How far? Holker asked, boots whitening the damp road dust. The white church? 1/2 mile, Geraldson said. Though it isn't white or a church, it's a deserted schoolhouse, gray with age. Folks once held services there, back when it was white. The graveyard beside it would make a poet happy. Guess why I asked you to come armed. I never pry. The story shows up when you're ready, Holker said. If I had to guess, you want me to arrest someone already buried? Remember Branscombe? Geraldson asked, ignoring the joke. The man who cut his wife's throat? I should. Lost a week on him and my expenses. $500 reward and none of us caught a glimpse. Don't tell me. I will. He's been under your noses. He comes by night to the old graveyard. The devil. That's where they buried his wife. You might have guessed he'd go back, Geraldson said. Which is exactly why no one expected it, Holker said. We checked everywhere else. And when you failed, I lay for him there. And you found him? He found me, Geraldson said. Got the drop on me, marched me along. God was kind he didn't put a hole through me. He's good. Half that reward's plenty for me, unless you're feeling strapped. Holker laughed. My creditors never take a day off. I mainly want to show you the ground and make a plan, the detective said. Even by daylight, better to be armed. The man must be mad, Holker said. The reward's for capture and conviction. If he's insane, there won't be a conviction. So shaken by that possible failure of justice, Holker stopped dead in the road, then walked on, with less enthusiasm. He looks it, Geraldson said. I've never seen a more unshaven, unshorn, un-everything wretch outside the noble order of tramps. But I've gone in for him and won't let go. There's glory in it. No soul besides us knows he's this side of the mountains of the moon. All right, Holker said. Let's see the place. He added with a graveyard's favorite motto, where you must shortly lie, assuming Branscombe gets tired of you poking around. He paused. By the way, I heard Branscombe isn't his real name. What is it? Can't recall. Something like Pardee. I stopped caring. The woman she was a widow when he met her. Came to California to find relatives. People do that sometimes. You know all this. Naturally. But without the right name, how'd you find the right grave? I heard the name was cut on the headboard. I don't know the grave, Geraldson admitted, a shade reluctant. I've watched the place in general. Part of today's work is to identify it. Here's the white church. Fields had bordered the road for a long stretch, but now the left side broke into oaks, madroños, and towering spruces, their trunks ghosted by fog. The undergrowth was thick in spots, but passable. At first, Holker saw no building. Then the schoolhouse appeared in a faint gray outline, looking huge and far off. A few steps later, it loomed at arm's length, small, wet, and shabby. A plain country schoolhouse, packing box architecture, set on loose stones, roof mossy, window openings empty of glass and sash. Ruined, but not a ruin. California's version of monuments of the past. With barely a glance, Jarrelson pushed on into the dripping brush. "I'll show you where he held me up," he said. "This is the graveyard." Here and there, small fenced plots held one or two graves. You knew them by the stained stones or rotting boards at head and foot, tilting or toppled. By broken pickets, sometimes only by a mound pushing through the leaf fall. Often there was nothing but a shallow depression, longer lived than the grief of the mourners who left it. Old paths had vanished. Trees had grown straight up from the dead and shoved fences aside with root and limb. The whole place wore the perfect look of abandonment, a village of the forgotten. Jarrelson, leading, stopped suddenly, brought his shotgun to his chest, and gave a low warning note. Holker, though he saw nothing through the brush, mirrored the stance and waited. After a beat, Jarrelson moved forward. Holker followed. Under the limbs of a massive spruce lay a man's body. They stood over it in silence, taking in the obvious. The face, the pose, the clothes. The first answers to the question everyone has before the dead. He lay on his back, legs flung wide. One arm reached upward, the other outward, bent sharply so the hand hovered at the throat. Both fists were clenched. The whole shape was resistance, desperate but useless. To what? A shotgun lay nearby, and a game bag threaded with shot birds. Around the body, signs of a fierce struggle. Poison oak shoots bent and stripped, dead leaves shoved into ridges by other feet, the ground stamped by knees at the hips. The nature of it was clear from the throat and the face. While chest and hands were pale, the face and neck had gone deep purple. The shoulders rested on a low rise, the head was forced back at an angle impossible in life, eyes bulging wide, staring backward. Froth filled the open mouth, the tongue pushed out, dark and swollen. The neck was brutalized, not just finger marks, but deep bruises and tears from two strong hands that had sunk in and held long past death. His hair and mustache were beaded with cold droplets. His clothes were soaked. The fog's steady drip had done its work. They took all this in almost at once. Then Holker said softly, "Poor devil, he had a rough end." Jarrelson kept his eyes on the trees, shotgun cocked, finger on the trigger. "Madman's work," he said. "Done by Branscombe, Pardee." Something half hidden under the stirred leaves caught Holker's eye. A red leather pocketbook. He picked it up. Inside were blank memo pages. On the first, a name, Halpin Frayser. On the pages after, scrawled in haste and barely readable, were these lines. Holker read them aloud while Jarrelson scanned the fog-walled circle around them, hearing threat in every drip. Bound by a spell I couldn't break, I stood in the lit gloom of an enchanted wood. Cypress and myrtle twined their heavy boughs, a brotherhood that promised nothing good. The willow brooded, whispering to the yew. Beneath them, nightshade, rue, and woven through, strange funeral shapes of everlasting blooms, tangled with nettles, black with poison dew. No bird song, no soft drone of bees at all. no leaf relieved by any wholesome squall. The air stood still, and silence seemed to breathe, a living thing that moved from trunk to wall. The spirits plotted, murmuring in the gloom, half heard the still, cold secrets of the tomb. The trees dripped the blood, their leaves in ghost light shone with ruddy fire, as if to prophesy doom. I cried aloud. The spell held fast my will. Soulless, unhearted, helpless, standing still, I fought the monstrous warnings crowding in. At last the unseen. Holker stopped. The writing ended mid-line. "Sounds like Bane," Jarrelson said. He had some bookish streak. He'd eased his guard and was looking down at the corpse. "Who's Bane?" Holker asked. "Myron Bane, early Republic, a century back. Wrote grim stuff. I've got his collected works. That poem isn't in there. Must have been left out." "It's cold," Holker said. "Let's get the coroner up from Napa." Jarrelson nodded. As he stepped past the little rise beneath the dead man's shoulders, his boot struck something hard under the leaves. He kicked it clear, a fallen headboard, the paint almost gone. The words barely readable. Catherine LaRue. "LaRue! LaRue!" Holker burst out. "That's Branscom's real name, not Pardee. And, good Lord, now I remember. The murdered woman's name was Frayser." "There's a filthy tangle here," Jarrelson said. "I hate that." Out of the fog, far off at first, came a laugh. Low, deliberate, empty. It had no more joy than a hyena's night giggle, and it climbed, slow and steady, louder, clearer, closer, until it felt within arm's reach of their little circle of sight. It was wrong, inhuman, unholy, and it froze those two seasoned manhunters where they stood. They didn't move, didn't reach for the guns they already held. You don't answer that kind of threat with iron. As it had risen from silence, it slid back into it, the final notes fading with mechanical cheerlessness into a distance that felt measureless. Thanks for joining me for this chilling tale. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next story we unearth. Until then, keep the lights low and watch the shadows.